Holmes presents Putting the Pieces Back Together, a forum for veterans and the community to connect. Here are your hosts, veterans John Galena and Brad Borders.
Good morning and welcome to Putting the Pieces Back Together, live from WSIC News Studios.
We had 8 listeners on Facebook, and now they're running for the exits as soon as the camera comes on.
It's funny. We were live for about a minute and a half, and then all of a sudden when we started talking, they were gone.
Yes. So we were up to 17 or 18 listeners last week, and now we're down. We are. I put in my Facebook post when I shared the feed that we are doing our best effort to tank all ratings. So it looks like we're succeeding.
Well, maybe we shouldn't have such good guests. Got an exciting show today with
that's for sure.
Vietnam vet and radio extraordinaire Leon Ijames.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Happy to have him on. Before we get too far into it, let me thank our sponsors, Cook's Headers, Welcome Home Vets, Lake Mountain Coffee, and our friend and fellow veteran, Dr. Grant Campbell. Appreciate you all continuing to support the show. And as we talked a little bit last week, we did get fired from Thursdays, but we got rehired for Tuesdays. So next week,
rehired.
Next week we'll be on for an hour.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what people are going to do.
I'm not
hour.
sure exactly what they were thinking there.
Yeah, they were, man. Like we like to say, poor judgment.
We might actually have to start showing up to a studio a few more minutes early.
Well, you know how we like to cut. We like to cut things close. You know, off the cuff is how we roll.
That's right.
So
too easy.
Just wing it, man. Just wing it.
Adapt and overcome. So this day in history got a really cool memory here. 1967, Jimi Hendrix recorded "Purple Haze." What an iconic song! I know when we were rolling up MSR1 in Iraq, that was a favorite of a lot of the guys.
Is that what y'all jammed to in your headset? Rolling up
every day we had something going.
How about that?
Yeah, every day we had something going. A lot of people don't know Jimmy was a 101st Airborne soldier, and he had received an honorable discharge after injuring his ankle that was not repairable.
Yeah.
One of the funny comments that I had read on military.com was that Jimmy said one of the best things that came out of his service in the military was he got dental work.
Oh, no
and that
kidding.
allowed him to play the guitar with his teeth.
That's right. He could do that too, and he'd play it behind his back. And
yep, right before he would set it on fire. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
What an iconic rocker. So
yeah.
Thanks so much.
Well, today's also Four Chaplains Day. So if you don't know what Four Chaplains Day, on February 3rd, 1943, USS Dorchester, which was oddly enough a converted cruise ship that they turned into a troop transport ship. It was going across the North Atlantic, just off the coast of Greenland, I believe, and it was torpedoed by a German U-boat. They had like a big convoy of ships. Had a destroyer in the front, a destroyer in the rear, and this submarine snuck in between everybody, because those things are, even when they're in a convoy, it's not like real close because they're miles apart. And anyhow, submarine struck the Dorchester from the rear, and it did not take long for it to sink. And on the ship were these 4 young chaplains. They were all lieutenants: Chaplain Fox, Chaplain Good, Chaplain Poling, and Chaplain Washington. Oddly enough, I served as a chaplain in the Army, and when I went to the chaplain school, the classroom where we did all of our all our study and work and everything was the Fox Poling auditorium, and that's where we did our graduation ceremonies and everything. So that's the first thing you see. There's a big stained glass thing at the entrance to that, where you see these images of these 4 chaplains. And so what ended up happening is the ship was going down. It was very sudden. It was like 1 a.m. 38-degree water, 34-degree water, rushes into the ship. People are panicking. They had to come out of soldiers had to come out of their bunks, and so half of them were up on deck in their skivvies, didn't have life preservers, and so the 4 chaplains were keeping everybody calm, directing people to lifeboats, and they realized as the ship started to sink that there were men that didn't have life preservers, and so they were wearing theirs, but they gave up theirs, gave them to other men so their lives would be saved, and And the ship went down, and the legend has it is the ship's going down. These 4 guys, and it was a Jewish chaplain, a Catholic chaplain, a Methodist chaplain, and a Congregationalist chaplain, and they were all locked arms, singing hymns and prayers and reciting the Psalms as the ship was going down, and they went down and lost their lives. And so in the aftermath of all that, there was all these eyewitness accounts, and so they were all awarded these medals for posthumously for bravery. They did not win the Medal of Honor, oddly enough, because you can't get the Medal of Honor unless it's some type of a combat action. So it was a Distinguished Service Cross. So pretty unique story. So we celebrate that. If you're a chaplain in the military, you celebrate that on 4 Chaplains Day. It's kind of a reminder that the Army is made up of a diverse group of people across all faiths and backgrounds, and how all of those things come together to work together for a common cause. And so those 4 young guys gave up their lives that day, and we remember them on February the 3rd.
That is a great story, Chap, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. And there's so many out there that it makes me think about, how Hollywood oftentimes tries to create the glamour around movies like the Titanic and these singing, the quartet that was singing there as the ship went down. But there's really a lot of great men and women that have served in our military that have been self-sacrificing for others, and this is just one example of so many.
Well, and it's also cool that there was these guys were awarded heroism awards, and it was not in the act of killing someone else.
Yeah, that's right.
If you read, you get the vignettes of people who've won awards, medals of honor. It's not about how many lives they took. It's usually about how many lives were saved because of their actions.
That's right.
Right. And
that's right.
So that's a unique thing that we don't glorify violence, but we glorify self-sacrifice and on behalf of others because of the love that people have for others. So
it's really interesting. Just another quick comment before we get to Leon. I know he's going to share some about his service in Vietnam and his return home, but going to combat in Iraq, it brought out this idea and this of just how barbaric people can be and how brutal they can treat other human beings. But at the same time, just to your point, it brings out a sense of humanitarianism. It brings out this love for each other and love for people at the same time. It's a contrast that when you get home, you really want to do something good. And more often than not, we don't have the outlet, or we don't know where to go do that or how to start. And that's a part of what the show is really about, is that there's so many great organizations, so many ways that you can be involved and engaged in your community to help veterans, to be able to thank them for their service, but also to be able to engage with them, that they know that there's a way for them to have a positive impact in our community.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Leon is one of my heroes here in Statesville. I've known Leon now for, I guess close to 2 decades now. And
it's been a while.
Brad was sitting here telling me how you used to call his football games on the radio, and so I'm a little nervous here on the show this morning. We've got a radio show pro here on us, and so we're just going to turn it over to you and let you share a little bit about your service with us.
And I would say this: the only time Leon ever called my name on the radio, unlike my brother who was a running back who used to score touchdowns, I was an offensive lineman, so the only time he ever called my name was when I got a holding call, which was evidently quite often. So, number 71, Brad Borders on another holding call. And then I would get yelled at by C.A. Fry on the sidelines. What are you doing? Right.
We had a way of setting that up so it makes sure that you got yelled at.
That's right. Thanks, Leon. I appreciate that. Right. Thanks.
That's how you become so famous, Chap.
That's right. Yes. Famous for being infamous. So thanks for being here, Leon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here and good to see you guys again. And I just want to say, I know you said to me earlier when you were talking about this is not about Purple Heart Homes. But I just want to say I am involved with PVAC. I'm vice president of PVAC, and you guys, I want to say thank you for the efforts you've put forth in getting the tiny homes set up, because John didn't mention it, and I don't know if it was mentioned earlier. He and I had talked about this some time ago when we were looking at doing some things for to help homeless veterans. So
That's right.
We had this in the back of our minds, and they just brought it to fruition. So
Well, we've got another one being built right now. There's one that's got a roof on it and everything, and it happened in about a day. So
it is
it's
amazing
pretty awesome.
how fast it can happen inside a building.
my
that you can
gosh, man.
build
Well,
a house.
this community is an amazing community. When you decide you want to do something to help somebody, there are those who just jump in and give it everything they've got.
Yeah.
And so
That's right.
it's amazing how that works. And I wanted to do a little tagline on something you were saying when you were talking about the 4 chaplains. You mentioned all the different denominations that were there, and you didn't mention the good old Baptists, which I am. And so, just thinking in retrospect, maybe that's why the ship went down. Didn't have a Baptist.
If they'd had a Baptist on there,
That's
it'd been
right.
upright. Yeah,
That would have kept it.
that's awesome, man.
Very funny.
Fantastic.
But talking a little bit about my service, and some of you that are listening probably have heard this story before because, as you know, I worked here at this radio station for several years, many years, and you've heard me talk about this story before. But as you said earlier, I served in Vietnam. I was there from December of '66 to January of '68. So I served almost right at 13 months in Vietnam when the tour was 12 months. But I had a critical MOS, and so therefore I stayed a little extra time to get somebody into the situation that I was in. Got out just before the Tet Offensive in 1968, and I'm sure you remember that. So it was an interesting situation for me. When I got back to the United States, though, I became keenly aware of what some people and I myself had to face because it was a whole different situation. I'm thinking as I get off the plane and in San Francisco and scared to death because when we were going down, the plane, if you've been to San Francisco airport, the runway is right to the water. And so here we are, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm saying, darn, I made it through this war, running like crazy, trying to keep myself from getting killed, and we getting ready to go down in the water. All of a sudden, there was the runway that showed up. But I was so happy when I got back that I just literally got down and kissed the ground because I made it back on American soil. And I was thinking about when I left to go to Vietnam, my dad, at the time I went into service, you got on a bus here in Statesville at the bus station, rode to Charlotte, and then you went from there.
Yeah.
And he was standing outside that bus looking at me, and I noticed tears rolling down his face. And when I came back, that was something I remember the whole time I was there. When I came back, I said, Dad, why were you doing that? He said, well, son, I'll be honest with you. I didn't think I'd see you alive again because I was looking at the numbers of people who were being killed over there.
Yeah.
So we said, we had a big hug and then said, thank God we're here.
Yeah.
And we're alive.
That's right.
And I have a lot of things to thank my dad for because I had some hair-raising experiences that come back to me, or to come to me when I came back to this country. Because not wanting to get off on a subject that creates controversy, but as you know, this country has dealt with racism and all kinds of things. And so I was
And Leon, if I can just interject there, to Brad's point about 4 chaplains, the military is the most diverse organization in the world.
It is.
And while there are some elements of racial divides within the military, it's predominantly very accepted. You accept a man and woman to your left and right. And so I know during your time you might have dealt with a little bit of that, but I would think coming out of Vietnam, you probably weren't expecting that.
That's the key.
You had been in a different culture and a different environment. Now it's kind of a little bit of a culture shock.
Mm-hmm. It was, and probably not so much of a culture shock as it would have been to most everybody because situations in different situations can be different. Well, that's not making any sense, and it's double talk, I guess. But I came back to this country, and I'm committed to the country and proud that I served in the military, and still am, for that matter. But I was faced with tremendous situations relating to my race.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for me to handle that.
Yeah.
So much so that I became extremely bitter, not to mention the fact that I had been exposed to Agent Orange and had PTSD going on and all of these things. And it was a situation where that I was just very bitter.
Yeah.
And the thing was that if somebody crossed my path, my goal was to make sure you didn't get a chance to do it again.
Right.
Because I was a trained killer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironic that so many people don't think about those situations when they start doing these things. But my dad, thank God, he was there. And he kept saying, son, it'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it. Let's handle this way. Let's do this. He sat down and talked with me And as a result, it was like the reboot program that we know about, and I've been through that class before, and I know the power that has on you also. Yeah. But the fact is that it was like that. He was the person who said, son, that's not the way to handle it. You're playing right into somebody's hands. You be in control. You decide how you want to handle this situation. And so I made the decision to handle it differently. Otherwise, I would have probably been a dead person. Because
that was one of the things that came out in that reboot class that you were in. For those that don't know, reboot is a faith-based approach to trauma recovery from combat that we have for military members, and it's all over the country. But we hold it here in Statesville. And in the class that you were in, there was another Vietnam veteran in that class, and by the name of Frank Turner. And one of the things that I remember, which is really cool, is that we had couple of Vietnam veterans, and everybody else was Iraq or Afghanistan, right? And so you had these two guys that had fought and gone to war, over 50 years ago, in a room with people that had within the last decade, or even sometimes even shorter than that, had come out of the fire in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what was really neat was to hear the way Leon and Frank would mentor, even though they were taking the class. They would mentor these younger guys and let them know that it was going to be okay, because a lot of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, some of the younger guys don't even see themselves even making it to your age, right? They're like trying to figure out how to make it to the next day. And so then when they can see a guy who's not only gone through all that, but then come home to be figured it out, right? Figured out how to be successful in life and how to not have self-destructive thoughts all the time, and make it to a place where you have kids and a career and all of that. It was really very helpful to have you guys in that class.
And just to tag on to that a little bit too, Brad, that a lot of people hear the Purple Heart Home story and they know this, inspired by the Statesville community and how Statesville helped build the Beatties a home. But what they don't really always hear is particularly the Vietnam veterans, and how many of those Vietnam veterans helped and were a part of building that home and a part of welcoming us home. And as Dale and I look back, we realize that the benefits, the welcome home, the gratitude that we receive is largely due to the Vietnam veterans and their commitment to not allow another veteran to return home and be unwelcomed. But to ensure that they are welcomed home. And what, I don't know if our listeners can see on the Facebook, but Leon's wearing a Vietnam veteran hat, an Army Vietnam veteran hat. And there's so many of those. And so often we just kind of look over that, look past that. But there is a pride in the service, and we're grateful for that. But I think it's beyond just pride in themselves that they served, but it's about trying to show the community to have pride in our veteran service and to make sure that they are thanked and welcomed home. And Leon, I just again want to thank you for your service and for welcoming me home personally. Really appreciate you.
Well, that's one of the things that we didn't get when we came home. We were talked about badly because of the Vietnam War and the climate that this country was in at the time. So therefore, it behooved us to go ahead and welcome other veterans home, because you were in a similar situation, except that you were more welcomed than we were, and we made sure of that.
That's right.
We let you know that we appreciated your service, and that we were proud of the fact that you were still doing what you thought to be the right thing to do. And one of the things you mentioned, the hat that I'm wearing, and I wear this occasionally. A lot of times I don't wear a hat, but there's some of us who are challenged, follically challenged, and I'm one of those. And so therefore I have to keep it covered up when it's wet. But at any rate, I'm proud of this hat and proud to wear it, because the fact is that many, many times when I do wear it, even when I'm in the grocery store and when I'm doing other things, somebody will invariably walk up to me and say, "Thank you, sir, for your service." Somebody I don't even know, never heard of. And some of the people that do that are at least the last person you would think that would do that. When you turn around and realize who did it, you're thinking, wow, he did that.
Yeah, the culture has changed. I know. When I came home from Iraq and I had to come through Atlanta, and I was walking through the Atlanta airport with a group of other soldiers, people I didn't know. I didn't serve with these folks. We just kind of got on the same plane coming back. But we're walking through like the Atlanta airport, and we had like dirty uniforms on and carrying bags, and like the whole airport, like when we walked through, everybody just stopped and started clapping. We were all kind of looking around at each other like, well, what did we do? You know, it's a really profound moment. And then when I got back and I met with my uncle, Uncle Kirky, who served during Vietnam, he wanted to know. He was like, what was it like when you walked through the airport? Did people say thank you? And I was like, yeah. And he just started crying, you know, because he never got that, right? That never happened. He got stuff thrown at him. And so there's a really profound moment, you know, for me.
And when I look at it, I know just, you know, a lot of people ask me, well, with all the things that were going on at the time you came back, how did you manage to get through that? And I've said earlier that my dad was a strong power in that because he was a strong influence in my life. My mother would just sit around and listen and sometimes cry when she heard some of the things. But my dad was a very strong influence in that situation, and we became much, much closer because I'll admit that growing up as a child, he wasn't my best friend. Part of that was because he was trying to make me do the right things, and I didn't want to do the right things.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool how our dads have that influence on us. I can say hey to my dad, Jack Borders, down at Sunset Beach, because he's a big influence on me going in the military, and pinned my lieutenant bar on me when I got commissioned. He also whispered in my ear. He said, "You should have joined the Navy because you're going to sleep in a hole." I think that was what he said, and he was right. I slept in a hole. Hey, Leon, if you had anything that you could say to our younger veterans out there, what would that be? If you had one message to say to them, what would you say to our younger veterans?
Well, I would say to our younger veterans that in spite of what problems we have in this country, this is the greatest country in the world. And if you have an opportunity to go out and do something that will strengthen and make this country stronger and bring us closer together, go out and do it. Don't be ashamed of it. Go and do it. And I know it's a life-challenging situation, and sometimes it can be a life-taking situation. Yeah. But think about the other things that you could be in. Think about the situation that you could be in where that somebody tells you when to go to bed, when to get up, what to eat, what to wear, and everything. You know, we don't have that here. Yeah. Yes, people try to dictate what you do and what you don't do, and we're blessed. That's probably not the proper terminology, with the fact that we have people to try to do those kinds of things. But that's not what we have in this country. Yeah. We have essentially a society that allows for people to be diverse and to do what they feel like is the right thing to do within themselves. So be proud of it. Go ahead and I said to a young man on Facebook, I don't get on Facebook a whole lot, but when I get a Facebook message from John Galena, I do get on it and see what it is. Right. But I saw where a young man who is a child of some friends of mine that live in my area, and I saw where he was going in the military, and I've been communicating back and forth with him just a little bit, talking about how proud they should be of what their young man is doing, because I had suggested that some time ago and talked to him about that. Yeah. And then, ironically, he was in the ROTC program at West Iredell High School, which has a very, very good program. So it was a situation where that he got an opportunity. Maybe some of the things I said had an effect on him, in addition to the ROTC.
Leon, as we start to wrap up here, I got a couple of points I just want to draw out. Your work with PVAC, Piedmont Veterans Assistance Council, you take and pick up veterans to take them to the VA and haul them to their VA appointments. And thank you for that service. It's just one example of a way that we can help each other, that our community can be engaged to be able to help serve. Plenty of need for donations to be able to support that program. And so we encourage people to check out Piedmont Veterans Assistance Council and support the work that you're doing, Leon. Another point that I want to draw out is the amount of suffering that Vietnam veterans have endured due to Agent Orange. And you mentioned your exposure to Agent Orange. And so there's a tremendous need out there. It creates some generational diseases and issues for the children of Vietnam veterans. And so it's another way that Vietnam veterans have impacted Iraq and Afghanistan and the generations that have followed, that you fought with the VA and our government to be able to ensure that these types of issues are recognized, they're admitted, and that they're properly cared for. And so, again, I want to say thank you and just let our listeners know just how much we appreciate you and all of our Vietnam veterans. And
thanks for taking time to be with us today.
Proud to have you on the show here. Just real quick, I want to draw out again. We're going to be on Tuesday starting next week.
One whole hour.
We've got Stephen Johnson State Command Sergeant Major in North Carolina National Guard will be joining us, and my fellow veteran Joey Waters will be on. We'll be taking live calls. We'll be doing a show to remember Dale Beatty, and we look forward to having you on.
God bless you. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Putting the Pieces Back Together with John Galena and Brad Borders. Join us again next Thursday at 8 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. for Putting the Pieces Back Together on News Talk WSIC.